Promare is... Okay, I think I'm gonna start a little bit off the rails this time. Before I got into making video essays, I, of course, watched video essays. When I watched Promare for the first time back in 2019, I fell in love with it, but I wanted to see what other people had to say about it. Not in a fandom space, though. Like I said, I have 401k, I'm too old for that shit. I was really surprised to see that outside of fandom, there wasn't much people had to say about it. Now, am I sitting here saying that Promare is an extremely important piece of media that shifted the cultural landscape, hearts, and minds of a generation? Absolutely not. In fact, if you give yourself time to think about it, it's easier to talk about its flaws than what it does right. The pacing is all over the place, nothing of real plot significance happens for 45 minutes out of a movie that's just under 2 hours. Some scenes contradict scenes that happened less than 10 minutes ago. I get that animation has squash and stretch and smear frames, but Promare has them where they don't make any sense. The ending is fucking dog shit. The world building goes between being elegantly implied to painfully ham-fisted at the drop of a hat. This movie is bad, which makes it even weirder to me how few people talk about it being bad, because people love ripping things apart. There's even video essays about how Breaking Bad is overrated. Somehow. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about today. Well, not mainly, at least. I'm mainly here to talk about Lio, the shining beacon of hope on this dumpster fire of a script. I have a couple theories around why people don't talk about this movie, and a major one is that it has such strong redeeming qualities, the average person could call it, well, average. On a technical level, this movie is really impressive. The animation's really good, despite that one thing that I said. The voice acting is solid both in the dub and the sub. Billy Comet's rest in peace. The soundtrack is banger city. Hiroyuki Imaishi said infamously in an interview that the best way to experience this movie is by not thinking about it too much. And as someone who's watched it over 50 times and thought about it enough to make this video, I can confidently say that I agree with him. Thinking about this movie actively makes it worse. And I would say, unless it's about Lio and there's a transition, part 1, what makes Lio great? But that's not completely the case. Like I said, writing-wise, he's the best thing about Promare. It doesn't change the fact that he's a little flat, and his development feels less like a character journey and more, it's the end of the movie, we gotta wrap it up. Okay, now we can transition. Dottie, can you put it in? Thanks. I would warn for spoilers, but honestly, the plot in this movie doesn't even fucking matter. Part 1. But what about everyone else? What do you mean, what about everyone else? You sound crazy right now. There's no other characters in the movie. It's just Lio. Part 2. Problems with people that think Breaking Bad is overrated. How do you think that? Okay, I guess I can talk about everyone else, but besides Kray, you could wrap him up in 5 words or less. Galo is common at 2.0, Aina is the voice of Reason Girl, Ellis is a genius coward, Lucia is a gremlin inventor, Ignis is the leader, Varys is the strong guy, Remy is the smart guy, Vulcan is a turbo fascist, Guerra is Florida man, Maze is goon number 2, Biar is the sexy secretary, and Tima is girl. And that's it. That's everyone. That's not the real main character and the villain. And Ratatouille. Galo is officially the main character, but considering what the movie is about, I think that's their first mistake. Galo was a victim of a Burnish attack as a child, and being the sole survivor of that motivated him to become a firefighter when he grew up. Firefighters in Promare are a mix of actual firefighters and ice police, and when he realizes that he's turning human beings into popsicles, that's when he starts getting upset. It's very hard to put together a main character like this without making it feel like a white savior story, but I at least feel like they did an okay job in avoiding that by giving him a personal vendetta against Kray. Kray was the person that saved Galo from the fire, kind of sort of becoming his adoptive father. It's unclear. I'd talk more about him, but I'm too busy bearing the lead. I'll get back to you later. But if we want to be objective about his backstory outside of Kray, it's fine. It does its job. It explains why Galo is so passionate about firefighting, but in the context of the movie, it's a little strange. Any other character with this kind of backstory would not switch to the side of the Burnish, at least not as easily as he does. Hell, this kind of thing in a movie about oppression would normally be his entire character arc, and it feels like the writing team was aware of this, but no one was on the same page with how to deal with it. Side A of the writing team figured the switch would make sense if he was already pretty susceptible, and Side B wanted to stay loyal to the backstory and just trusted that Side A would make it make sense. So as a result, Galo is a flip-flopping mess. Where he stands with them depends on what scene he's in. Fight at the beginning, he's obviously against the Burnish and proud of it. He gets upset when Vulcan tries to take credit for the arrest, for crying out loud. Pizza scene, on the side of the Burnish. This is one of the parts where the world building is way more ham-fisted and they beat you so hard with the racism bad meshes the movie you could sue for assault. He stands with Ina against Vulcan for arresting the Burnish pizza guy and makes it pretty clear that he sees the Burnish as people. So it's very interesting that in the next scene, in the cave, he's like, why do Burnish need food to survive?
Be quiet. We're trying to eat.
I didn't know you Burnish even ate food.
I'm bringing up these examples in chronological order, by the way, if anyone was curious about that. He doesn't flip anymore after this, implying that Leo's speech in the cave swayed him, but again, I really don't think that's enough, because they want to show Galo as this paragon, like this lovable, well-intentioned idiot that just wants to be a hero and save everyone. Unlike most protagonists, it helps that his situation isn't unique to him. It's an issue that basically everyone's had with the Burnish. Oh, wait, I should probably explain what the Burnish are, huh? Part 2. What is a Burnish? So, the Burnish are like the only thing in the movie that are established well at the beginning and then kept consistent throughout the runtime. I have to constantly give credit where it's due so I can justify how much money I burned on Promare merch.
Oh yeah, these are all zines, by the way. I'm pretty sure they're all Promare zines. There might be one, Vanitas zine in here. No, yeah, I was right. They're all Promare zines.
It shows that the Burnish are people, implying that the power awakens involuntarily through some kind of stress. It shows the cataclysmic damage these awakenings cause and the divide between humanity and this new version of human. You can feel the panic and despair through the incredible score overlaid with news reports and warnings. There's imagery implying this isn't just a new mutation, but a movement and a religion and a people. And this is all done with little to no dialogue. What words are here are inconsequential and lost in the noise. They don't calm down until half of the population is lost. And then you're cut to where the Earth is now, where humanity has all but won, and the Burnish only exist in small chunks. Has the prejudice died out? No. Is it still understood that being a Burnish is considered a mutation? Yes, but the nature of that mutation doesn't seem to be fully understood, specifically the part about it being involuntary. The pizza scene, while swine-handed, is one of the most important scenes of the movie if you care about the world building, because it establishes this misunderstanding and punctuates it with this really awkward line, basically saying, I'm fine with the good ones, but it'd be even better if they stopped burning everything.
I'm sure some of those Burnish guys are pretty decent, and the discrimination is just because those terrorists give them a bad name.
Yeah.
But that's the thing! They can't stop burning everything. It's pretty smartly implied that the only way to maintain control is to control your emotions, not only through Lio Hen, where Mad Burnish snatch up Tima and teach her about her new life, not only through the opening, but also through Leo's entire personality. He's stoic and cold, all traits that you'd expect from any leader of a revolution. Even when he's passionate and caring, he shows it with every ounce of poise and composure that he can muster. It's easy to pass this off as he wants to put on a strong face, but we learn exactly what happens when the gloves come off. When he's the last Burnish left and he realizes that his attempts to coexist with normal humans only results in his friends and loved ones being captured. He wanted to lead by example. They made a settlement in the desert, only coming to town when they needed to burn. Every time they burned, they made an escape route, not just because Lio didn't want to hurt anyone, but because he understands that a major problem people have with the Burnish is the whole human flesh is weak to fire thing, which, fair! They can't stop burning on account of the fact that this mutation is a sentient flame that constantly tells them to burn. We have to burn in order to live is such a cool line, but it's also literal. The flames do hurt the Burnish as much as they hurt anyone else. Their body is always burning, but the burns also heal them until the flame dies out. It's why firefighters need to use ice to stop them. Normal wounds would just get cauterized. A lot of people could call the cave scene as hog-gripped and awkward as the pizza scene, but there's something about the voice actor's performance and the somber tones that make it feel grounded. Maybe some of it has to do with the fact that Lio doesn't have much going on for him outside of the Burnish. Maybe it's easy to see this as a stepping stone for his silent revolution, realizing that he finally has an opportunity to plead their case. No matter what it is, I really like this scene, even if it introduces us to the main problem with Lio as a character, but you knew this was coming. we have to talk about the racial implications of this shit. Part 2.5. The racial implications of this shit. Revengeance. The Squeakquel. With Dante from the Devil May Cry series. And Knuckle. So, the racial implications of this shit are kinda complicated, and I am begging y'all to be nice to me on this part. I will try to condense it as much as possible, but I want to make it clear how difficult this is because the Burnish is Leo's entire character, so thank you for your patience. If you've seen any video against Detroit Become Human, I'm kind of citing Mother's Basement's video specifically here, but you understand why this allegory doesn't work, right? If anyone started setting houses and cars and people on fire, you'd hate them too. The whole point of discrimination being such an awful thing is because bigots have no real objective reason for it. It's all just H.P. Lovecraft starring in The Fear of Different Things, featuring Euclidean geometry. There's tons of imagery and theming in Promare that has a lot of real-life parallels to so many different struggles, like pink triangles were a very common symbol used by the LGTB community in protest during the AIDS epidemic. Involuntary abduction and human experimentation is something that has plagued minorities, especially in America, for a really long time, and in a way, is still an issue now, with immigrants being forced into sterilization, not to mention ice being used to trap the Burnish, like ice being used to imprison immigrants, but that one I will accept as an unfortunate coincidence with the 4-year development time of this film. Hoses were used against black people during the civil rights movement, really making that firefighter police thing feel a little bit more insensitive. I know some people have called this movie anti-Semitic, and I'm not saying this to speak over those people. I'm not Jewish. I don't have the authority to say anything on it. I just want to point out that that is not the only real-life parallel in this movie. They threw everything in the kitchen sink in there to remind you that the Burnish are the oppressed ones. And that's not incorrect with the tone of the movie, but the oppression makes too much sense. Human beings are really fleshy and super weak to fire. They're defending themselves, and if first contact with them caused half the Earth's population to die, of course they're gonna fucking hate them. It just makes me so mad because these minorities equals non-human allegories are getting more and more common, and everyone keeps doing them wrong. You see, what you're supposed to do is make the non-humans the bad guys, and then make the real-life minority the hero. It's that easy, I promise you. The way we get allies is sympathizing with your fellow man, but if who you're supposed to sympathize with is directly threatening the lives of your fellow man, you're just validating the racism. Oh, it's okay, they just did like some bad things once or twice, but you're supposed to forgive them. That's not how this works! The bureaucrats are the ones that oppressed us. Why the fuck would we forgive them for that? I didn't know where to put this, but I feel like now it's as good a time as any. The ending to Promare, and therefore the lesson we're supposed to gauge from this movie, is the Burnish losing their powers. And then everything's okay. Symbolically telling the audience that the key to stopping oppression is to stop doing whatever they're oppressing you for. Stop being black. Stop being gay. We won't have a reason to be racist if everyone's white. We won't have seasoning either. Reading interviews just pissed me off even more about this too, specifically this interview with Kazuki Nakashima, the lead writer. Now, this is a fan translation of a magazine interview, so it might be a little off, but basically what he's saying is, quote, "Unlike ethnicity or sexual minority, being a Burnish isn't something that's inborn. Being a Burnish is something acquired, something like an infection. It is not a mutation." And it just makes me angry because he's right. He says later in that same interview that it's Kray's misinformation about the Burnish that controls people's feelings about them. Something that I'm pleasantly surprised isn't directly contradicted by the movie, but is even very heavily supported by it. Even the lyrics to one of the songs supports this idea. Kray, for the record, is revealed to secretly be a Burnish who killed Professor Deus, the only person vouching for fair treatment of the Burnish. He probably took his place in the media circus and pushed the stories of all the fires they burned, favoring the message that the only way to be free from the Burnish is to imprison them. Because they're being pushed to the public as mutants that can't help themselves, not humans stuck with a symbiotic parasite. Why would he do this as a Burnish? Don't worry. Hopefully we'll all figure that out later. But even though this point is validated by the narrative, it doesn't change the fact that they borrowed all that real-life imagery anyways, which begs the question, why? Did they think viewers just wouldn't get it if they didn't? All the interviews with the heads of this basically amount to, hey, this isn't what we intended, but if that's what people get from it, that rules, which is so irresponsible with that fucking ending. I can't get over it. Part 3. Character, I hardly know her. I mentioned before that I consider Lio to be pretty flat. This isn't just talking about his development or his ass. I wish fan artists would stop deluding themselves. But I also mean in terms of who Lio is. So, who is Lio? He's the leader of the Mad Burnish. He sees the Burnish as his own family and will go above and beyond to protect them. What kind of personality does Lio have behind that cold front? No pun intended. Well, with the way he sat on his throne and the wheelie he popped at Galo, he's a bit of a smug, show-offy bitch, right? Oh, wait, that was... He threw that fight. On purpose. To save the Burnish. Can we really say that counts? Like, he's doing some super cool shit in the prison break, and there is nary a smirk in sight. Lio is a bit of a mom friend, and a little self-sacrificial. When everyone's eating, he's not. This is either because he's keeping an eye on Galo, or he chooses to eat last so everyone else gets the strength that they need. But either way, mom friend behavior to protect the Burnish. Shit, I don't really have anything else. I like to think you can tell a lot about a character through what they like and what they don't. We know that with some other characters. We know Galo likes pizza, which can imply a love for community and friendship, since pizza is a food that's supposed to be shared. We know Lucia likes her inventions, implying a love of progress and control over situations, but a lack of desire for putting herself in danger since she uses a fighting gamepad to do everything during rescue missions. What does Lio like? Outside of the Burnish. You don't know either? What's that? Bikes? Again, can we really say that, though? Lio was an add-on to the Mad Burnish. He became their leader because he saved May's and Gieta's lives. Have you considered that he just chooses to ride motorcycles because everyone else does? I mean, there's a good chance that he does like bikes, but I just get the feeling that he likes bikes because the Burnish do? Even in the very beginning of the movie, the generic Burnish in the New Circus had heavy motorcycle gang imagery. I'm trying to say Lio doesn't have any personality outside of the Burnish. Well, I'm sure he does. Even the most passionate revolutionaries have other things that they like and care about. It just doesn't change the fact that those other traits aren't in the room with us right now. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I'm not seeing something. Let's look at his wiki page. Look at some more interviews. Okay, here's a tweet from a Trigger panel. Quote, Lio and Galo's ages, birthdays, heights, and blood types are never to be disclosed. That way it's harder to put them in a category. But Wakabayashi and Koyama said they're entry-level businessman age. End quote. Okay, this actually tracks with Trigger's other projects, so while I believe them and their reasoning, I don't have to like it. I love Zodiac and astrology stuff, so I'm just gonna leave a big wall of text on the screen and save us both some time. Pause if you want to read it, but I know it's a huge side tangent, so I'm just gonna move on. Geekboat universe lore both claims him to be born from Detroit as well as having British nobility. Oh, the Geekboat universe. They're probably talking about Detroit. Most of the other Geekboat books about Promare are art books. Detroit is a doujinshi by Shigeto Koyama, who designed the characters. So this one has a lot of official weight to it. But hold on, there's a little more on this one. This latter fact was brought into question by one of the directors, making this dubious. Great! Look, I'm trying. It's a desert out here. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that his development feels less like a character journey and more, it's the end of the movie, we gotta wrap it up. But I didn't really elaborate. Hi, doing that now. Lio is a very simple and flat character, but that doesn't mean he's bad or unsalvageable.
I am a blank canvas, sir, upon which you might create your masterpiece.
You kind of want your characters to start off simple so it's easier to see them grow. Eleanor from The Good Place was a pretty simple character, self-centered, kinda trashy, the perfect reality TV show contestant. So seeing her grow into someone less selfish and actively improve the lives of those around her is really fun to see. Even better when you learn about the shit she did before she died. Backstory is important, it makes their current actions that much more meaningful. For people that don't know, Promare was in theaters, like actual theaters in the United States. It hit the box office like 3 times, not counting the occasional guerrilla showing at the Alamo and stuff like that. The first showing was just the movie. The second showing was the movie and Galo Hen, a short going over Gallo's first day with Burning Rescue. There's some rare good foreshadowing from Kray.
He's extremely motivated. Use him for anything, even the most dangerous missions. I had you placed in Burning Rescue because it was the job with the highest mortality rate. I wanted to be rid of you, but you kept surviving, and you kept coming back!
And you learn some more about Gallo. When it comes to times of crisis, he's someone you want to rely on. You get hints of that in the full movie, but it feels more like dumb luck and main character syndrome, while in the short it feels a little bit more calculated. You learn how he earns Burning Rescue's respect. Very good short, genuinely improves the movie, A+. The third showing was the movie, Galo Hen, and Lio Hen. So, if Galo Hen is his first day at Burning Rescue, it only makes sense that Lio Hen is his first day with A Burnish. So, where is he? Where is he? Where is Leo Fotia? Where is my boy? Oh, there he is. Lio Hen is 10 minutes long. Leo shows up in the last 4 minutes. I put this number in as a placeholder because I thought I was exaggerating. I wasn't. He rescues all the Mad Burnish from Freeze Force, tells them to build a settlement, and that's it. That's all he does. We already knew about the settlement from the raid. We already knew Leo would have saved the Burnish no matter what. I guess we find out how he became the leader, but it's a little rushed, isn't it? We already know Leo is anti-murder. We at least find out why he's anti-murder.
Regular people will just fear us even more. The government will deploy more troops, stronger troops, and the Burnish will face even greater oppression. The rest of us are suffering because of your thoughtless actions.
And while this reasoning makes sense, Leo's morality starts feeling a little fuzzy, because there's 2 ways you could interpret this. One is, let me try my best Leo voice. I really think killing is always wrong, but I know they're angry. I understand their anger. I need to phrase my morals in a way that makes sense to them. The other way is, I don't actually care about cops' lives, but I do care about the lives of the Burnish. The Burnish have an image problem, and if we want to survive, we really need to fix it. Because if they see us as harmless, they're gonna leave us alone. I personally saw it as option 2, because I like to think Leo is pretty smart. He also makes a point in his fight with Gallo to say it's not about fun, but I think they were going for option 1 and just kinda fucked it up. His morals are another thing that changes throughout the film, but it's not quite as egregious as Gallo, since the times when he drops his morals make sense. The first time is kind of a nitpicky asshole reviewer moment. The prison break, he definitely killed at least half of those guards. The real time when the gloves come off is both the best scene in the movie and when the movie jumps the shark. One of the Burnish he rescued betrays him. This bitch-ass old man kept a tracker on him from Freeze Force, luring them into the settlement and getting them all captured. At least we understand why he betrayed the Burnish, unlike someone we're talking about later. In a last-ditch effort, Maze and Gira launch Leo out of a cannon that ends up landing in Fennel Volcano, which is a religious place for the Burnish. I am getting as much mileage out of this collector's edition as humanly possible. Freeze Force shot him with a special ice bullet that freezes more the warmer he gets. I'm not a scientist, I don't think that's how it works though. They guess he's doomed anyway and leave him to hopefully die, but the rage of a twink cannot be contained so easily. When the chips are down and Leo realizes he has nothing left to lose, he burns the city to the ground and turns into a fucking dragon! This scene is so cool. The volcano's eruption turns into his head screaming, Superfly's Kakuse is on full blast and composed specifically for this film. The entire movie, the second you first see his resting bitch face, you can tell that he's holding back. He wants to stab some fascists super fucking hard. It's so satisfying to watch someone get the revenge they so rightfully deserve. I honestly would have been happy if the movie ended here, the Burnish get let out, and he wipes out every normal human in Prometheus. That would have been sick. But Leo's not the main character. Galo is. Maybe I was wrong about the white savior thing. I get it. This was supposed to be a good thing for Galo to do so Lio doesn't do something in the heat of the moment that he'll regret. He was being designated driver. Good for him. But this is Leo's story. And Leo's problem. Lio is the one that dealt with all of that bullshit and discrimination. Leo's people were the ones that got experimented on and captured and tortured. It is not Galo's right to say what he thinks Lio will and won't regret. He met him 2 weeks ago. Maximum. Lio has been at the forefront of all of this shit, putting on a brave face while he realizes time and time again that his solution just doesn't work. His morals went against the alternative for too long, and he probably regrets not letting Free Force die in the short now. This breaking point was supposed to be cathartic. Fuck the racist implications of this shit. This is just a fat middle finger to anyone in the audience rooting for Lio. You know, doing that whole thing that you set them up to do? Part 4, Kray Foresight. Alright, Kray is kinda hard to talk about. He's a Burnish, I'm pretty sure I said that already. He's also the bad guy. He's a twist villain, someone Galo looked up to, voiced by Winston Overwatch.
I'm on fire!
And his motivations accurately reflect how angry I get about politicians in real life. Now that we're this far in the video, I think I can talk about the story now. Look, I'm giving you the accurate premiere experience here. It wasn't brought up until this late in the movie, either. The magma in the Earth's core is rising because of Kray. It's his fault. The flames that tell the Burnish to burn, the flames that are controlled by emotions, they're connected to the Earth's core. And Kray knew this the whole time, that upsetting the Burnish would just agitate the flames and therefore the magma in said core. The fire that killed Galo's parents was his fault too, by the way, but it was an accident, so awkward. But it felt good to have everyone call him a hero back then, so he wants to be called that more. This time, on his terms.
We can't build the warp engine without the Burnish.
There has to be some other way. If we can just stop the magma, then we won't have to go to another planet.
I've considered that, of course. But with our current technology, there's no way to stop the magma's rampage. Migration is our best bet.
Literally his fault, and I don't believe him for a second. Not with the shit they shot Lio with, especially not the ice beams and Kray's stupid robot. But what sounds cooler? Being the guy that ended domestic terrorism, saved humanity from a planet that's literally on fire, and reestablished civilization on a new planet? Or being the guy that introduces a new job that requires climbing into the Earth's core and hitting it with cold every now and again? Always option 1. Even if option 1 requires using the Burnish as human fuel to warp to another planet, and using them as fuel makes the flames in the core upset. So, just to sum this up, Kray started the propaganda that made people hate the Burnish, and knowingly caused global warming, and built the tools to stop the Burnish, but not global warming. But he did build a ship that will turbocharge the global warming and kill everyone. You can't even say he lacked the foresight. I said you can't even say he lacked the foresight. Kray is kind of a dumb villain, and like a lot of things in this movie, it's really frustrating because he didn't have to be. If Lio was the main character and they tweaked the motivation just a pinch, fantastic foil for Lio. Finding out Kray's a Burnish horrified him. Lio was already questioning what the Burnish were even burning for with the stupid alien twist. He at least had that last bit of hope that there are these unfair oppressors that they're right to fight against, but finding out that your lead oppressor is a part of your race, the only people you thought you could trust, devastating! Lio wants to show the world that the Burnish are harmless, leading by example through never burning to kill. Kray wants to show the world that the Burnish are monsters, and he's the hero here to save normal people from the Burnish. This dynamic really could have been something, being considered the token good Burnish to normal people, and having that be public knowledge might have actually made the whole story a lot more interesting. His propaganda would have been a lot more meaningful, since he would be living, breathing proof that Burnish don't actually need to burn. But Galo's the main character, and he needs a personal reason to go against Kray, so instead we just get what would happen if Clarence Thomas was the mom from Kill la Kill. And it's really disappointing. Part 5. Galo and Lio is queerbaiting. I don't get why no one talks about this. Well, I do kinda get why. It's because no one sees it that way, and I'm inclined to disagree. I don't know if it's because people don't know what queerbaiting is, or people somehow forgot about TJLC, or maybe people's standards for what constitutes as official has gotten lower since I last checked. Maybe everyone just stopped caring, but it's a shame because we deserve definitive, clear representation. I'll try to use a definition so we can all get on the same page on this. Okay, this one sounds good. The term queerbaiting refers to the practice of implying non-heterosexual relationships or attraction in a TV show, for example, to engage or attract an LGBTQ audience or otherwise generate interest without ever actually depicting such relationships or sexual interactions. For example, a TV show may be accused of queerbaiting when interactions between two same-sex characters are consistently suggestive of sexual attraction or a sexual relationship, but the characters never actually enter into such a relationship, including and especially when their sexuality isn't otherwise discussed or portrayed. I like this definition. I just want to really hard emphasize one little part of it, both to prove my point and because I think this part of queerbaiting doesn't feel like it's usually considered queerbaiting. Most people even give it a pass. I need y'all to stop that. Queerbaiting is still queerbaiting if the characters never actually enter a relationship. You could really shorten the definition to a character or characters that can be considered LGBTQ, but are not explicitly confirmed to be by the characters or the media that they're from. That's my definition, Merriam-Webster. If you're interested. I'm obviously not saying that anyone is wrong for having gay headcanons. I have gay headcanons. It's just a problem when people start treating those headcanons as fact. Let me try to outline this with an example. Yuri on Ice is not queerbaiting. Not only are Yuri and Victor's interactions almost aggressively gay, but they literally get engaged. Promare is queerbaiting because you could call Galo and Lio's relationship whatever the fuck you want. Nothing is right or wrong. They could be lovers, they could be friends, this could have been a one-time thing and they're still kind of enemies. I am not saying this out of any kind of spite. I genuinely like the ship. I'm just not blind. They talk a total of 3 times throughout the movie before the big fight. The first time is the arrest, and a lot of people are inclined to see this scene as horny?
So, are you amazed yet? You know I didn't get naked just for fun.
It hadn't crossed my mind.
I am inclined to agree with them, but where this falls into queerbaiting is how this is open to interpretation. I, and most BLT people, have seen this as desire to bottom at first sight. Other people could call this a joke and move on. It's in response to Lio tearing off his armor, saying he's
unarmed and naked.
He's also not wearing a shirt. You guys knew that? You guys can see that. Second time was in the cave, and oh my god, I did not realize how much of an ass Galo is. Yeah, this is the scene when he's surprised that Burnish eat food. I know it's a joke, but it's a lot less funny if you replace Burnish with black people. But that's not the end of it. Lio explains why they can't stop burning, and Galo's response is, have you considered not burning everything?
Oh, so you're running away again?
That's right. As long as we're being hunted.
Why can't you just stop starting fires?
Lio tells him about the experiments and why he doesn't trust him, and Galo doesn't believe him after he watched Tima die because of them and saw the children all covered in bandages. Like, sure, he investigates later, but Lio was pissed. I actually want to make a shorter video about this scene, so I'll hold back for that. But Jesus fucking Christ. The third time was the dragon scene into Lio learning that his sentient flames that he worships, the flames that are the reason for the plight of his people, but the very thing they need in order to survive, the fire that defines who he is, everything that they're following and fighting for as what unifies them, were aliens. And Galo was being a dick about this, too!
So, are you feeling conflicted? Yeah, you probably are. Just found out your flames are aliens.
What do you know about how I feel?
Absolutely nothing, I guess.
Lio is going through an existential crisis after his beliefs were shattered, and you're mad. He's internally trying to find out what the point of rebelling was if they were all just following another master, and you're mad? Get over yourself! Last time he told you about what it means to be a Burnish, you told him to stop doing that. Of course he doesn't want to talk to you about it again. I do really like their banter. They do have some good moments, like Lio calls everyone their full name except for the Burnish and eventually Galo. It's a subtle way to show Lio grew to care about him. And that smile and fist bump at the end, cute as fuck. When Galo dropped Aina at the lake when it looked like he was about to kiss her, that's one of the funniest jokes in the movie. King Empath over here being able to tell that Leo's crying is out of frustration and his dragon flames are out of grief. Super sweet how Galo gets all tsundere after giving him CPR is adorable and cute and funny. It makes me want to throw up. The lyrics to Kori ni Tojikomete, the song in those credits, are basically about their relationship. You're cold like ice, but you might melt from a fiery love. Hurry and freeze me right now. I will embrace both your lies and your truths. So don't go. Don't disappear. Your package came in the mail. They are gay, Greg. I'm just saying this movie doesn't deserve the credit it gets for its representation when it only commits to ambiguity or things that are easy to miss. Even the pink triangles that I said were gay were confirmed by the director to be about general nonconformity. They literally won't pick a struggle. The closest they get to something that couldn't be explained by something else is the blink and you miss it heart explosion at the end. It took me like 4 or 5 watches to notice this for the first time, and even then, with how many basic shapes make up the visual style in this movie, you could say it's a stylistic choice. You'd be wrong, but you could say that without sounding crazy. There's a kiss, but it's CPR. The cheapest form of getting a kiss on screen. Oh, it's so much longer than normal CPR, and look how it's animated. It's still CPR. Someone could still say it was only done to save his life. Oh, but he gets all nervous. Still CPR. Homophobes will still say that it's CPR. So even though you have a kiss, it's still queerbaiting. In fact, I bet they gave Tima that scene specifically to make homophobes less upset about this scene. It only gets more frustrating when you look at the merch. They have wedding rings, and I got this thing, and these other acrylic stands that obviously match from the Valentine's Day promo, and whatever the fuck this promo was all about. I got this honeymoon merch. I know it doesn't look official, but this is genuinely my favorite merch line, but the creators still say, it's open to interpretation. Fucking whatever. Stop giving Studio Trigger credit by saying it's canon. It's not. There's nothing wrong with liking the ship. Again, I like it too. It's just not canon. They haven't earned it. That's kind of all I'm trying to say here. I could probably dive deeper, but like I said, they don't really talk until the big-ass fight, and the conversations just aren't really that deep. We gotta wrap this up. You know, I've been working on this script on and off for several months at this point. Went through a lot of drafts that I threw away because of a million different reasons. Didn't flow very well, I rewatched the movie again and noticed something that contradicted all my thoughts, I just flat out didn't feel good about it. You name it. I didn't really incorporate research until this final draft, and it's just been bumming me out, because I had to accept that I care about this story more than the creators do. Am I saying that because I don't think the creators cared about what they were making? Hell no, this movie took over 4 years to make. If you listen to the creators talk about this movie, there's a very clear love for what they did. The interview where Imaishi talks about the symbolism of the triangles and the burnish and the struggle of combining 2D and 3D animation is pretty interesting. Him at the round table with the other project leads is just fun to watch. I always love hearing about a person's creative process, and finding out that Promare basically came out of the realization that fire would be a fun challenge to work with was weirdly kind of endearing to me. But there just isn't much when it comes to the story. They don't really take a stance. I said at the beginning that Imaishi says not to think about it too much. I didn't mention that he followed that up with, however, we put a lot of special ideas in this movie, so finding out what we did is another way of enjoying it. Which one is it? Realizing that they focus so much on visuals and aesthetics kind of had me worried when making this, because I'm sure plenty of people will say it's not that kind of movie, or it's not like you watch MCU movies for the plot, and I firmly disagree. While those visuals are important and the main focus, Imaishi does talk a lot about how much meaning those visuals have, like the obvious. Triangles are supposed to show rebellion, while squares are about conformity and living in boxes. The story and visuals aren't mutually exclusive with Promare. Stuff like Spider-Verse and the Gorillaz music videos kind of already prove my point that you can have both and there's no reason not to, unless you just lack the skill or resources, or in this case, just the spine to say something definitive. People don't talk as much about the MCU anymore because the story just doesn't matter. The last few phases were all about building up to Endgame, and that plot was not just world ending, but universe and galaxy ending. The stakes literally couldn't be higher, so everything after it just felt pointless. And back in its heyday, there were some movies that didn't get as much love because the stories just sucked. Like the Thor movies that aren't Ragnarok, or Iron Man 2. In spite of everything I said, I want to make it clear that I do earnestly love this movie. I have a tattoo of it, for crying out loud. Look at all the useless merchandise I got. I don't care. It makes me smile. My eyes and my design, triangles in my pretty pink eyes. Them's because of Promare. So why do I tear it apart so much? Why do I waste so much time on this thing that I have so many negative feelings about? Well, first off, it's fun to point out thing bad, and here's why. I also firmly believe that you can't honestly say that you love something without being able to accept that it's inherently flawed. Pointing out the specific flaws can be a bit harder, but if it's been touched by human hands, there's no such thing as perfect. If you aren't willing to accept that, you're just infatuated with your own idealized version of whatever you're talking about, not the actual product. And I feel like a lot of people these days, especially when talking about anime in video games, are forgetting that. But when it comes to Promare in particular for me, this quote from Alan Moore kinda says it all. As a prospective writer, I would urge you to not only read good books, read terrible books as well, because they can be more inspiring than a good book. A genuinely helpful reaction to a piece of work that you're reading is, Jesus Christ, I could write this shit. That is immensely liberating to find somebody who is published who is doing much, much worse than you. And by analyzing why they're doing so badly, this will immensely help your own style. End quote. I have been playing some bad games, and I have not been this creatively motivated in years. When Promare came out, I was getting really insecure about this visual novel I've been working on. I generally got pretty good feedback, but I was afraid it was just because it was people I knew. I presented at a local thing, but most people in that community already know me and were there to see me struggle as I first learned Python. The second I realized Promare was awful, all that insecurity went away. Like, comment, subscribe, bell. I don't know how to end this one. Bye!